So that was all well and good. So being a swimmer again, that was fine. But I'll tell you what, there was one burning question in my mind from very early on after this happened. And that was, is there any way that I can reclaim some of this guy? I took this photo with the self-timer in a mountain range called the Ruwenzori Mountains on the border of Uganda and Zaire in Africa. Two pretty wild countries at the best of times. When you go into the mountains, it's exemplified a bit. But I wanted to put that up there to show you that's the kind of place that I was comfortable in. Is there any way that I can reclaim any of that part of my life back? Was the big question. One of the things that I discovered in rehab was that you don't have to have skinny little wheels on a wheelchair. You can put mountain bike wheels on. And so I started, quote unquote, hiking. I'd just been on a hike of about 7 kilometres with my brother-in-law. Just had my first swim in a wild river. And we'd gotten out and we were both stretched out in the sun on a couple of rocks like lizards soaking up the sun. And again, I had one of these moments where the light bulb went off. And it came with a picture. It came with a picture of this mountain. This is Cradle Mountain. It's on the island of Tasmania, down the southeast corner of Australia. And this picture came with a question. I wonder if I could climb Cradle Mountain. I'd climbed it twice before with 2 legs. I wonder if I could do it without any legs. And I got to thinking about it. You know you've set a good goal when people look at you like you're nuts, when you tell them what you want to do. And appropriately, I told my psychologists in rehab, was the first person that I told. I went to Daphne and I said at one point, Daphne, I think I'm going to climb Cradle Mountain. And she says, isn't that like a mountain? I said, well, yeah, actually it is. It's sort of a mountain, yeah. Now, I've got to put the disclaimer out. We haven't got any real mountains in Australia. We haven't got any big mountains. Cradle Mountain's only about 1,200 metres high. But you could see it's high enough, and there was a little bit of snow on it. And I figured, I just wonder if I could do it. And eventually, I got to the point where the answer was yes. And I'll tell you how I got to that point. I didn't realise it at the time. A guy called Alan Weiss gave me this term. I realised that I'd been living by it for a long time. You ever heard of the 70% rule? The 70% rule says by the time you're 70% certain of something, you go for it. What happens if you wait for 100? How often are we 100% certain of anything? Now, those of you with spouses here are excused from answering that question, but not very often. So for me, what I've learned is that by the time you're 70% certain, you go for it, because the last 30% doesn't get shown to us until we're actually moving, right? Now, I was nowhere near 100% certain that I could climb Cradle Mountain, but I was 70% certain. And I knew that the things that I didn't know, the questions that were unanswered, would be shown to me only when I started the journey. Two and a half. This photo still blows me away for a couple of reasons. One, Cradle Mountain took me about 4 or 5 hours to climb the previous 2 times I did it. This time it took me 2.5 days. Right? One of the big lessons I'd learned is that, as I said, perception is huge for me. Right? Perception's where the rubber meets the road. A huge turning point in my life was when I realised that I wasn't trapped in a wheelchair, it was a tool, and when it couldn't move me forward anymore, I could get out and I could keep going on my backside. So I used the wheelchair for a lot of the way. The last part I jumped out up the steep section and basically climbed up on my butt. But a couple of things that still blow me away about this photo. One of them is that my car is back in there somewhere. Now there's a tip for you. You should never use one of these things when you've drunk as much coffee as I have today. Yeah, that's not good. Okay. The other thing that blows me away, and the reason that I got the sunglasses on in this shot, is this photo was taken less than a year after my accident. It was taken 10 months after losing both legs, which I'm telling you still blows me away. But tells you how amazing it is what you can pull off when you set your mind to it. Right? It still blows me away. I was on a mission to reclaim back part of my life.